Well, President Volodymyr Zelensky has ordered an investigation into what he described as a terrible tragedy with that helicopter crash. In a video link addressed to the World Economic Forum in Davos, Zelensky said that Western tanks and air defense systems are urgently needed there to prevent Russia's next wave of missile attacks. Here's what he told them.
Tragedies are outpacing life. The tyranny is outpacing the democracy. Russia needed less than 1 second to start the war. The world needed days to react with first sanctions. The time the free world uses to think is used by the terrorist state to kill.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky addressing the World Economic Forum in Davos. Well, let's get some more analysis. We can cross to Berlin and speak to Rafael Loss, who is coordinator for pan-European data projects at the European Council on Foreign Relations. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. As we know, on Friday, Western allies are going to be gathering at a US airbase in Germany to discuss offering more weaponry to Ukraine. Is it in that context that we should interpret Zelensky's address to the World Economic Forum, do you think?
I think that is certainly the case. We could also interpret in that context Olaf Scholz's refusal on stage at the World Economic Forum in Davos a couple of hours ago to even mention the issue of tanks that are being considered by various European countries, German-produced Leopard 2s, in fact, that Germany would need to sign off on for their transfer to Ukraine. Germany has a sizable arsenal of those tanks itself. It also holds the industry, the key to industry that could maintain and sustain those tanks for Ukraine. But here the Chancellor is still avoiding making that decision in favor of transfers to Ukraine.
I mean, it's been a very busy week at the Defence Ministry in Berlin. You've, of course, got a brand new Defence Minister. Do you think that between the period Monday to Friday, we're going to be looking at a Defence Ministry that's becoming more open to supporting Ukraine with heavy weaponry than it was perhaps at the start of the week?
That might be the new German Defence Minister, Boris Pistorius' personal position. We don't know yet. But what the last 11 months of war have shown is that the decision-making on what to transfer and in what quantities solely lies with the Chancellery. We saw this recently with the Marder decision to supply German-produced Marder infantry fighting vehicles along US Bradleys to Ukraine, where the defense minister, Christine Lambrecht, who resigned just days ago, was not involved in these discussions beforehand, and the German Defense Ministry is still scrambling to figure out where those infantry fighting vehicles are actually coming from. I suspect that that trend will continue, that the Chancellor will make the decisions ultimately and potentially surprise even his closest advisors in which direction he wants to take Ukrainian support.
I mean, the German Chancellor is presumably listening to or tuning into public opinion to some extent. I mean, what does the German public think of all this? Do you think on the whole they would be in favor of sending more support to Ukraine?
I think, unfortunately, the picture is such that you can interpret German public opinion in either of two ways. I think that certainly Germans have shown a willingness since Russia attacked Ukraine in February of last year to sustain Ukraine's defense and to allow Ukraine, with Western support, to recapture the territory that Russian forces are occupying. At the same time, I think the Chancellor, as did his predecessor Angela Merkel, seems to take public opinion polls that see support for the government's position as proof that he shouldn't change anything to disrupt the status quo of public support for his aid agenda. But that unfortunately means that Germany will remain in a reactive mode and not enable Ukraine to proactively change the dynamics on the battlefield and to actually recapture occupied territory.
I'm just listening to Zelensky, listening to the Polish leadership, listening to a lot of people observing the situation close from a vantage position, one might say. There seems to be a real sense of anticipation, a sense of urgency in their messaging, a sense of anticipation that Russia is about to take this conflict up a gear. Is that a correct understanding, do you think?
I think that is indeed the case. We've seen Vladimir Putin escalate the conflict over the past couple of months with the annexation of 4 regions that his forces don't even fully control. We see an escalation of the terror bombing campaign against Ukrainian civilians, against Ukraine's energy infrastructure. The latest missile strike in Dnipro was a devastating one. We see various rounds of mobilization. The next one is being prepared. And certainly the indications from the Russian Defense Ministry are that Russia is preparing for a long war, that is preparing for a long-term confrontation with European states, with the NATO alliance, and that NATO countries, including Germany's leadership, aren't prepared for that.
Yeah, I mean, it does look like it's heading that way, a long, drawn-out conflict. But is there a danger, therefore, do you think, that Western support will wane, will fade out as time goes by, as it has done with other conflicts where Russia's used exactly that technique of tiring everyone out and hoping that public opinion will eventually tire of the conflict?
That seems to be the bet that Vladimir Putin, Russia's president, is making, to wear out the West. He believes that he has more resources to draw on a longer-term time horizon that allows him to outmaneuver the West, to out-sustain the West in this aggressive war against Ukraine. Olaf Scholz today on stage at the World Economic Forum said that Germany, and I think this goes for other Western countries as well, are ready to sustain Ukraine as long as it takes. But if it just means catching up with Russian advances, additional rounds of mobilization, gearing up of Russia's defense industrial complex in order to actually sustain its own fighting force in this long war, then I think we're heading for a stalemate. What the West needs to do now is to equip Ukraine for victory.
Okay, well, thank you very much indeed for taking the time to talk to us, Rafael Loss at the European Council on Foreign Relations. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.